Skyrim is a game beloved by many with droves of quests to undertake and dungeons to clear, and the slew of different playstyles and personal challenges add countless options of replayability. You could restrict yourself from utilizing certain skill trees, or take it up a notch by toggling certain add-ons or mods to add the need to manage your hunger, sleep, and warmth needs. Or you could even go to the extremes and restrict yourself from playing as a stealth archer. Or maybe you just want something as simple as turning up the difficulty slider a little. Today I will be answering the question that a young 15-year-old me had 5 years ago: can you beat Skyrim in one life? I decided for this run that despite its survivability and viability as a playstyle, I would not be playing as a stealth archer, as I prefer the more up-close and personal approach to handling things. So I would be playing a dual-wield light armor character. I decided to play a wood elf lady as I love animals in the natural world, and this character was meant to be a self-insert, so after watching Lokir get his back blown out and spending 30 minutes in character creation, I was raring to go. Some ground rules for this challenge: I will not be playing with any conventional mods. I will be playing Skyrim Special Edition with the add-ons I have from the Creation Club. At some point during this run, I did purchase the Anniversary Edition, but I did not own the upgrade from the start. I would like to slay Alduin. I consider the DLCs to be optional objectives, but I will tackle them if I can. I will be playing on Legendary difficulty with Survival mode turned on. Carriage fast travel is fair game, but I probably won't end up using it. Glitches like Fortify Restoration potions to make stupidly strong gear are off the table, with the exception of making my follower carry more than they should be able to once or twice during my run. I will be working within the boundaries of the 3 crafting skills. However, I do consider the Necromage perk paired with being a vampire to be fair game as well. After a particularly nasty little beastie of a dragon decided to unceremoniously interrupt the separation of my head from my shoulders, I escaped in the fray of everything with Hadvar. I moseyed my merry way over to Riverwood, where I took some supplies from the blacksmith. After giving a drink to the beggar, stealing some crops, preparing some provisions for the road, and taking a quick power nap, I set out on my adventure. I set my sights on Whiterun, where I brewed some potions for some quick gold to hire Janessa from the Drunken Huntsman as a follower. Janessa is one of the few followers who is able to dual-wield one-handed weapons without having a pickaxe as her left-handed weapon, making her incredibly powerful for a challenge run like this. I left Whiterun with the intention of finding some materials to craft some early gear, and after struggling to kill a wolf, Janessa and I went to clear out a few of the bandits at Halted Stream Camp. I was a little nervous about trying to challenge the boss, so I just decided to take some of the ore here at the front of the mine and leave. After returning to Whiterun, selling some of the slowness potions for some easy gold, and making a few more health potions for the road, I bought a few more crafting materials and cobbled together some leather scout gear and a backpack before leaving Whiterun. I stole a horse from the Whiterun stables, decided to start making frequent quick saves to mitigate any lost progress from game crashes, and set out for a dwarven storeroom located in the volcanic tundra of Windhelm for some dwarven metal to grind my smithing. After scrounging up all the dwarven scrap metal I could melt into ingots, I decided to set out for Kynesgrove, keeping my eyes peeled for Dragon's Tongue, Scaly Foliota, and Flyam needed for grinding my alchemy. Along the way, I ran into the revelers. Thankfully, I had a spare bottle of hunting brew meat to share with them, and my generosity was rewarded with a charmed necklace to fortify my carry weight. After arriving in Kynesgrove, I harvested some fly amanita from the mines, procured a bit more food from the trash barrels, and rented a room for a quick power nap before heading out again. I set out for the area near Iverstead, where I harvested the scaly foliota I needed from some decaying birch trees. It's also worth noting I picked up the Dragon's Tongue I needed while I was adventuring around the volcanic tundra near Kynesgrove earlier. I took the snowy mountain path back to Riverwood, where I picked up the Thief Stone from the Guardian Stones. When I returned to Riverwood, I swapped out Janessa for Fandel after solving his little love triangle issue. I returned to Whiterun to procure some building materials before setting out for Golden Hills Plantation. After clearing out the former residents and putting their souls to rest, I made Fandal the steward of my new stomping grounds and planted my alchemy reagents I picked up earlier before heading inside and getting some rest. When I woke up, I spent my skill points on alchemy, built a blacksmith shop for my plantation, and set out for Whiterun. I picked up Janessa again and decided to start the main quest. After listening to the Jarl and his court wizard gab for a bit, I went to go and make some more slowness potions for some quick gold before making some camping supplies alongside vegetable soups. An incredibly powerful food item that allows you to do a virtually infinite number of power attacks, as it restores 1 point of health and stamina for 720 seconds, and the minimum amount of stamina required to initiate a power attack is only 1 point. Now, with all of my ducks in a row, I set out for Bleak Falls Barrow. I set up camp outside the barrow and dispatched the bandits at the front of the dungeon, wondering how much difficulty I would have dealing with the Draugr. They can inflict you with brown rot, a horrible disease that makes your armor protect you from 25% less damage. We blazed through the dungeon with relative ease, learned the first word of Unrelenting Force, and snagged the Dragonstone before setting out again. I decided to cut through the mountains through Brittleshin Pass to return home to Golden Hills. I didn't have too much trouble with the undead inside, but I did run into an assassin who was after a slice of my juicy track runner thighs when we emerged from Brittleshin. Thankfully, after pumping this lusty Argonian full of hot, slender arrows, she relented. I had Fandel hire some farm hands and purchase some livestock when I returned home to harvest my crops. I made sure to collect the plantation's profits before heading back to Whiterun and returning the Dragonstone to Farengar, after which the House Carl informed us of a dragon attacking the Western Watchtower. So now, tasked with slaying a dragon, it was time to set out once again. The fight wasn't terrible, it took a lot of arrows and I only attacked when I was not the target, but we emerged victorious. Upon reporting to the Jarl and learning about my status as Dragonborn, it was time to make the pilgrimage up to High Hrothgar and meet the Greybeards, masters of the Way of the Voice. So after a quick little rest at the inn, I was ready for action. I planted some wheat and blue mountain flowers over at Tundra Homestead for some easy health potions later on, and I turned in the quest for the Golden Claw as I passed through Riverwood again on my way to Ivarstead. I ran into another assassin as I was crossing through the mountains who served as an alarming reminder for me that I am incredibly weak, and one wrong move during this playthrough would mean certain death. I stopped at an alchemist's shack where I found a friendly rabbit, who, after taming with a carrot, decided to tag along with me on my pilgrimage. I offered to help Klimek deliver his supplies to the Greybeards as I got to Ivarstead and began climbing the mountain. I set my campsite down on the way up to warm myself a little by a campfire, and I decided to loop around the little area where the Frost Troll resides because I don't really like my chances of trying to fight him, or anything else for that matter. The Greybeards taught me the second word of power for Unrelenting Force, as well as the first word for Whirlwind's Sprint Shout, before tasking me with retrieving the horn of Jurgen Windcaller from the ancient fane of Ustengrav. I returned to Golden Hills Plantation on the way to Ustengrav to make some potions to keep us alive during fights, and now I was ready to clear out whatever the dungeon could throw at me. I tried to kill a crab on my way to Morthal, and after it took down half of my health bar before you could say Nachos Bel Grande, I decided to spare this weak little crustacean. This fight was not worth losing my run over. Some cultists tried to assault me when we arrived in Morthal, but we didn't have very much trouble dispatching them, thankfully. Killing the bandits camping outside of Ustengrav was a little bit of a struggle since Janessa decided to take her unauthorized 15-minute break without clocking out or providing any prior notice, but thankfully I found her and she made quick work of the undesirables. I encountered a fair bit of resistance in Ustengrav, but I mainly had Janessa tank for me, so I was fine. I picked up Become Ethereal on my way through the dungeon. It's a Mauska tool that will help us later. I used Command Animal on my way past the large frostbite spider just before the main chamber, where we found a note telling us the horn had already been taken, and the thief would like to meet us at the Sleeping Giant Inn in Riverwood. I returned to Golden Hills Plantation and harvested my crops before collecting the profits from Fandel and having him purchase a horse for me who I named Vanilla. I took Vanilla to Riverwood and met with the grave robber who stole the horn, who revealed herself to be a member of the Blades, and requested my assistance in killing a dragon who was about to be resurrected in Kynesgrove. I parked Vanilla at the Braidwood Inn before building a campsite and heading up to the burial mound, where we found the cheeky bastard who burned down Helgen. Mr. McPoops' resurrected the dragon we came to slay. The fight was pretty difficult because the dragon kept targeting me, but just when I thought I was safe after we slew him, my game crashed, and now I had to fight him again. Delphine suggested perhaps the Thalmor are responsible for dragons returning to Skyrim, and to meet her back in Riverwood, but before then, I needed a nap. As soon as we left the inn, another dragon decided to come and try its luck to kill me, and despite the fight taking forever, I eventually emerged victorious. I had to look around a little to find Vanilla, but thankfully she wasn't far. I harvested my crops at Tundra Homestead before returning to Golden Hills Plantation, where I took a little nap before building a bunkhouse for my farmhands. After a moment of contemplation for what my next move should be, I decided to return to Halted Stream Camp and finish wiping out the bandits to get my hands on the Transmute Mineral Ore spell. I returned to Golden Hills Plantation, transmuted all of my iron into gold and silver, harvested my plants as needed, and spam crafted jewelry in an attempt to level my smithing up to 30. Midway through the process, another dragon decided to show up and start harassing me. But he wasn't as tough as I expected, and I even managed to get a cool execution on him too. I wasn't able to get my smithing to 30, so I decided to shift my gears and focus on my alchemy first. I started spam crafting potions with Scaly Foliota, Fly Amanita, and Dragon's Tongue, picking alchemy perks as I leveled up. I got my alchemy up to level 79 and decided to head back to Whiterun and begin pillaging garlic from the locals. The green thumb perk would help me stockpile quite a bit of garlic. I also pillaged the barrels around the city for some more food. After I stole all the garlic I could find in Whiterun, I went hand fishing for the salmon jumping upstream to start getting some salmon roe. I traveled to the lake behind the Guardian Stones near Riverwood and harvested all the barnacles I could find on a sunken ship. After gathering all of my ingredients, I went back to Whiterun, rented a room, and made potions using garlic, barnacles, and salmon roe to bring our alchemy to 95. I was a little bit agitated and impatient as I trudged back to Golden Hills Plantation to harvest more crops and spam craft more potions, but we finally maxed out our alchemy. We made some really strong potions to keep us alive in fights. I went to Whiterun and began selling off my potions to start stockpiling some dosh. I purchased some real estate from the Jarl's steward before purchasing 7,000 pounds of crafting materials. I went back to the Guardian Stones to go and get the Warrior Stone for an extra XP bonus before we can begin the smithing grind. I spam crafted elven bows to push myself to smithing 80 and decided to switch to spam crafting steel plate K-Rasses to get the last 20 levels. I made a set of glass gear and I gave it some mediocre upgrades before heading back to the Guardian Stones to pick up the Mage Stone. A blood dragon tried to fight me in Riverwood on my way back to Whiterun, but after a couple of love bonks on the head with my war axe, he was feeling a bit eepy. I deconstructed all of my enchanted gear I purchased alongside my crafting materials before purchasing a few hundred low-tier soul gems to spam enchant gear to grind our smithing to maximum. After flipping all of my newly enchanted gear for a decent profit, I purchased some grand soul gems and made a set of fortify alchemy and smithing gear, made an incredibly strong smithing potion, and began fortifying me and Janessa's gear and putting some high-tier enchantments on them too. I was now ready to sneak into the Thalmor Embassy after leveling the playing field a bit in terms of my power level. I was feeling pretty confident I could hold my own in a fight now without having to rely solely on Janessa. I wonder if I can finish this run without dying. I'm feeling scared and vulnerable, but bigger than ever. The road ahead will not be easy, but now I stand a fighting chance. I stopped at Tundra Homestead and brewed some health potions before returning to Riverwood and speaking with Delphine, who pointed us to her contact in Solitude. An especially unwise blood dragon decided I would be its dinner. I shredded the poor lizard like a finger in a pencil sharpener. On my way to Solitude, I encountered Miko, a dog whose master passed away. Miko, seeking companionship, decided to come along with Janessa and I on our quest. After sleeping for a day inside the Winking Skeever, fixing my in-game sleep schedule, I shoved my 202 pounds worth of gear into Malborn's tight little prison wallet before heading to the Thalmor Embassy by carriage. I got the drunk to cause a scene so that I could slip away and arm myself to the teeth before hacking and slashing my way through the forces of the Thalmor. They do a hefty bit of damage, but thanks to my gear, I stood a fighting chance. We freed Etienne and escaped through the troll cave before grabbing Vanilla and returning to the Sleeping Giant Inn and reporting our success to Delphine, who points us to Riften to find Esbern. I decided to take the mountain pass near Helgen to get to Riften, where a corrupt guard tried to shake me down of my hard-earned money I made from the OnlyFans. I convinced Brynjol to give up Esbern's location with my silver tongue, and not by slipping him a free 2 months worth of the OnlyFans content under the table for him to sink his teeth into before cleaning out the Ratway. I blazed my way through the Ratway vaults and convinced Esbern to let me raid his little hovel while he yapped about Alduin, the bad dragon who burned down Helgen, devouring the world. I'm almost certain there's some kind of lewd joke here to be made, but I'll let you use context clues to figure it out. I carved my way back out of the Ratway vaults, grabbed my horse, and returned to Riverwood where Esbern and Delphine pointed me towards Skyhaven Temple. an ancient temple where the old order of dragon slayers recorded all they knew of Alduin and how to defeat him. I made a pit stop at Golden Hills Plantation to restock my magic resistance potions before stumbling across Alduin raising one of his old companions, a dragon named Nahagliv, who met his untimely end at the business end of my axe. With all the distractions out of the way, I rented a room in the Rorikstead Inn for the night so I would be nice and rested for the road ahead. We arrived at Karthspire and began hacking and slashing our way through the Forsworn as an elder dragon carpet-bombed the landscape with fire breath. Though the dragon was a fearsome foe, the worm also fell by my hand. We cleaned the remaining Forsworn from the cave before solving the puzzles to gain access to Skyhaven Temple, where we learned of an ancient shout that could knock a dragon from the sky. Much to Delphine's displeasure, it appears I was going to have to pay a visit back to the nursing home on the Throat of the World. I returned to the Throat of the World, and this time decided to slay the frost troll I avoided during my first visit, and returned the horn of Jurgen Windcaller to Arngir. I received the third word of unrelenting force before the Greybeards shouted racial slurs at me at the top of their lungs. I asked Arngir about the shout used to defeat Alduin, but he forgot to take his insulin today, so he gave me a little bit of trouble before eventually relenting and allowing me to meet the head honcho of his merry little band. We learned the Clear Sky shout to start cutting our way through the storm that guarded the way to Parthenax, the leader of the Greybeards, who taught us a new slur to use against our enemies, before sending us on a quest to find an Elder Scroll, a fragment of creation itself that was once used long ago to cast Alduin forward in time to present day, that we may use its powers to cast ourselves back to the moment when Alduin was banished, and learn the Dragonrend shout from the ancient Nordic heroes who created it. I returned to Arngir and asked him if he knew where to find the Elder Scroll. He pointed me to the College of Winterhold, so I grabbed my horse and began heading north. I arrived in Winterhold and immediately made for the inn to rest and warm my weary bones. In the morning I gained access to the college by demonstrating my knowledge of the Storm Voice, and made straight for the library. The librarian was less than pleased to have company, but he gave me the books I needed, and pointed me in the direction of Septimus Cygnus, a madman who holed himself up in the ice fields even further north. Saddling up again, we set out even further north until we found the Redditor's little goon cave. Septimus pointed me to Blackreach, an ancient dwarven city that lies beneath Aftant, a dwarven ruin embedded within a glacier in the frozen wilds near Winterhold. I saddled up once again and made for Alftant. Upon arrival, I subdued a nasty little saber cat and made my way inside the first tower. I breezed through the automatons and reached the top of the glacier, where we entered the glacial ruins and met a crackhead kitty cat who we gently put to sleep. We hacked and slashed our way through dwarven sphere guardians and steam spiders alike, raising my way through traps with the become ethereal shout. We delved ever deeper into the bones of the earth until we encountered the Falmer, the once proud race of snow elves, enslaved by the dwarves in a time long forgotten, now devolved into blind, almost bestial creatures after the mass disappearance of their dwarven masters. The Falmer were strong, but not strong enough as I cleaved my way through their ranks, collecting a few of their helmets as trophies. I toppled a steam centurion at the end of the dungeon before stumbling across a few treasure hunters who I made quick work of, before using the key Septimus gave us to delve even further. Finally reaching Blackreach, I began carving a path through the denizens of this massive cavern when I noticed a very big ball. I love big balls. I screamed a slur at the big ball, summoning a social justice warrior dragon, Vuthriol, who has come to cancel me yet again. Miko valiantly stood his ground against the dragon until I arrived and began tearing the scales from its hide, and landing a nasty execution on it that I couldn't see very well because my camera was focused from the behind, unfortunately. With a spring in my stride, I moseyed on over to the Tower of Mizark, took a quick power nap and a bedroll, and ate some salmon to rejuvenate and recharge before solving a light puzzle in the Dwarven Sky Dome, revealing the Elder Scroll, shimmering with the magnificent light of creation. I left the Tower of Mizark and realized my horse was left up near Winterhold. I shrugged it off and headed down to Tundra Homestead to deposit all of my goodies and make some more food for the road before returning to the Throat of the World. Standing in the time wound, I read the Elder Scroll, projecting my consciousness to the other end, where I learned Dragon Rend, the shout that can knock dragons from the sky, and watched as the ancient heroes used the Elder Scroll to banish Alduin from their time, casting him forward to mine. Returning to the present day, I found Alduin waiting for me, and now, armed with Dragon Rend, I was ready to finish the fight the heroes of old had started. I buffed myself with my potions and began clashing blade and axe with tooth and claw. Alduin commended my strength, before revealing a terrible secret. Though I am strong, I cannot hope to prevail against him here on Nirn, for he is the firstborn of Akatosh, dragon god of time. But though I could not defeat him, I wounded him gravely this day. I meditated with Paarthurnax on my unrelenting force shout, granting me extra stagger to enemies with my attacks, while granting me stagger resistance from enemy attacks. I used my Become Ethereal shout to jump down the mountain and return to Whiterun without taking any fall damage, before returning to Tundra Homestead to take a nap and restock my potions. In the morning I made my way up to Dragon's Reach and persuaded Jarl Balsac to allow me to use his palace to trap a dragon, but first I had to have Ulfric Stormcloak and General Tullius agree on a temporary truce to the civil war plaguing Skyrim. I stole the horse from Whiterun stables and returned to High Hrothgar, asking Arngir if he could host a peace council, being as High Hrothgar was neutral territory. I saddled up once again and made for Windhelm, where a particularly annoying dragon decided he wanted today to be his final day in Tamriel. I cut him down without a second thought and picked up my first word for frost breath from his nest. I took my pickings from the farms outside of Windhelm to make more potions before heading into the city and speaking with Ulfric Stormcuck, persuading him to agree to a peace council. I went to go and retrieve Vanilla, my horse, and began making my way towards Solitude, where I encountered an elder dragon dining on some choice cuts of bandit flesh. I, however, was feeling a little peckish for dragon myself, so I carved him up into little tiny steaks and devoured his soul before finishing my journey to Solitude. When I arrived in Solitude, I persuaded General Tullius to also attend the Circle Jerk at High Hrothgar. I returned to the Greybeards and took my seat at the table in the council, while everyone yipped and yapped until both sides finally agreed to a truce. After all was said and done and the Stormcucks left Hrothgar, Esbern taught me the name of one of Alduin's trusted generals after finding it in the dragon lore libraries of the Blades, Odahviing. If we call Odahviing's name on the great porch of Dragon's Reach, he may feel quite enticed to taste our voice for himself after hearing of our recent victory over Alduin. I used Become Ethereal to jump down the mountain again, stopping by Tundra Homestead to sleep, cook some more food, and replenish my potions again before returning to Dragon's Reach and telling the Jarl I'm ready to trap a dragon. I called Odahviing's name and did battle with him. I drained his health bar without really understanding what else to do before I realized that I had to lure him close into the palace to trap him. I interrogated Odahviing and learned Alduin's whereabouts in the ancient fane of Skuldalfin, high in the mountains to the east. Alduin has a portal to Sovngarde, where he has retreated to lick his wounds after our last fight sent him scurrying off with his tail between his legs. Alduin was devouring the souls of the damned to replenish his strength. Odahviing offered to fly me to Skuldalfin since it is inaccessible to mortals. Barngar, the court ditty, ran some experiments on Odahviing before I set him free. It looked a little painful, but baby oil hasn't been invented yet, so of course it's gonna feel like sandpaper. We rode Odahviing all the way to Skuldalfin, and I had to hang on extra tight because of how big he is. We arrived at Skuldalfin. Janessa and Mika were left behind, and for the first time in a long time, I was alone. I cut down Draugr and Dragon alike as I carved my way through Alduin's forces, taking extra precaution not to let myself get thrown around by unrelenting force. Fun fact, it's only the female Draugr Deathlord archers that have access to a fully powered unrelenting force shout, and if I were to die anywhere on this journey thus far, it would most likely be getting ledged by a Draugr. I made my way into the temple, already having used half of my healing potions, soldiering on and recharging my weapons as needed. After carving my way through innumerable Draugr, we slew one final Draugr Scourge Lord and retrieved the Diamond Dragon Claw to open the claw door that fed out into the main chamber, where we learned a word for the Storm Call shout. We exited to Upper Skuldalfin and ripped our way through the last few Draugr warriors before tearing Nakareen, the dragon priest guarding the portal, into little tiny confetti pieces, taking his mask and using his staff to reopen the portal to Sovngarde. I opened my eyes as the winter air tickled and danced against my skin, gazing into the heavens of Aetherius for a moment before taking my first steps into the land of the Nord dead. I met the soul of a Stormcloak soldier who warned me against adventuring through Alduin's mist, which he used to snare souls and stop them from reaching Shore's mead hall. I cleaned a path through the mist with my Clear Skies shout and marched onward to the Whalebone Bridge, where I met Soon, Shore's shield thane, who tested my skill in battle before granting me access to the Hall of Valor, where I was welcomed by none other than the legendary Nord hero Ysgramor himself. My fat ass snagged a roasted ox leg to munch on before meeting with the 3 ancient Nord heroes who I originally learned Dragonrend from, as I watched them shout Alduin out of the sky in a faded memory of a time long forgotten. Gormlaith Goldenhilt, Feldir the Old, and Hakon One-Eye. The 4 of us took up arms, and with our thumes combined, we blasted away Alduin's infernal mist. Alduin summoned a meteor storm, and I hit him with Dragonrend before buffing myself with potions and finishing what I had started on the throat of the world. I watched in awe as Akatosh himself absorbed Alduin's soul from the heavens, and soon relayed to me one final gift from Shore himself before sending me back to the world of the living. A shout that allowed me to call forth an ancient hero from the Hall of Valor to fight by my side for a time in my hour of need. I awoke to find myself on the throat of the world, surrounded by dragons who recognized me as their ruler. I exchanged some more words with party snacks and invited my friend Jack to an Xbox party to tell him about my victory. To answer my own question, can I beat Skyrim with only 1 life? Yes, I certainly can. But I feel a strange yearning inside, along with a hunger that I can't describe. I don't think I'm finished yet. I came back to my playthrough after taking a break for a few months. I forgot I used this ugly green overlay for all my old recordings. I'm really sorry about that. I guess I was just so excited to use one without really thinking of how it would affect the quality of these older videos I'm finally getting around to uploading. With Alduin slain, I decided to go and lend my hand to the Dawn Guard to fight against the growing vampire menace. I ran into a Spriggan on the way to Riften, who used her powers to turn Miko against me. Janessa, seeing what was happening, cut Miko down before I had a chance to try and calm him down. I laid Miko's broken body down next to a fallen birch log and said my final goodbyes. I entered Dayspring Canyon and walked with a nervous new recruit up to the fortress, where Isran gave me my first mission to go and find some artifacts some vampires were looking for in Dim Hollow Crypt. I took a pit stop in Riften to rest my head in the inn before setting out for Dim Hollow. I set out from Riften and began heading to Dim Hollow Crypt. I stopped on the way near Whiterun to slay a giant and his mammoth pets before devouring the soul of a blood dragon unfortunate enough to cross my path. I slew an old orc who was requesting I grant him death, settling a personal grudge in my heart, as one of my older attempts at a deathless run was ended by this very same orc. I climbed up the side of a mountain to get to Dim Hollow Crypt, and I slashed my way through vampires and Draugr alike. I ventured into Dim Hollow Cavern, slew the last of the vampires, and solved a brazier puzzle to free an ancient vampire from her stone prison. The vampire introduced herself. Her name is Serana, and she recommended we go find her family in a castle off the coast near Solitude. We beat and broke some gargoyles and cleaned up the last of the Draugr in the main chamber of the Barrow, where we learned a word for the Drain Vitality shout before heading out to Serana's home, Castle Volkihar. We arrived at the castle and met with Serana's father, Harkon, a vampire lord who offered us his blood as a reward for the safe return of his daughter and her Elder Scroll. After a moment's hesitation, Harkon embraced me and sunk his fangs deep into my neck. I awoke amidst piles of bones, feeling a deathly coldness permeating through my body as I rose to my feet from the stone floor, feeling an ancient, dark power coursing through my veins. Harkon stood beside an altar of Molag Bal and taught me how to use my new powers. After my lessons, Harkon gave me a task and sent me to Garen Morethi, another vampire, for more information. Morethi told me about the Bloodstone Chalice, an ancient vampire relic that we needed to fill at the blood spring beneath the Redwater Skooma Den in Riften. I took a nap in a bedroll with the livestock because I didn't know where any empty coffins were, and then I set out for Redwater Den. I decided to make a pit stop in Whiterun, and I took a nap inside of Breezeholm. I asked my friend Jack if I could get an invite to his Xbox party so I could play Forza Horizon 5 with him, but he told me to step off. So I just decided to continue progressing through my Skyrim playthrough. While in Whiterun, I spoke to Danica Purespring to learn about the Gildergreen tree growing in the city's center, asking if there were any way to revive the tree. Danica pointed me towards Orphan Rock, a hagraven nest near the ruins of Helgen. They have a weapon called Nettlebane that they use for sacrificing Spriggans. If I could retrieve the blade, then I could make a pilgrimage to the Eldergleam tree, the parent tree of Whiterun's Gildergreen, and retrieve some of its sap to revitalize its child. I slew the hags and their matriarch without breaking a sweat, retrieved the weapon and returned to Danica in Whiterun, who then pointed me to the Eldergleam Sanctuary Grove. I set out for the grove and stopped to slay a giant along the way. We arrived in the Eldergleam Sanctuary, tapped the tree, and slew a mob of angry Spriggans. I decided to make my way over to Redwater Dun since I was in the neighborhood, where I sampled some skooma, slew all the attendants, and began carving a path through the vampires deeper within the cave. After slaying countless lesser vampires at every twist and turn in the dungeon, we finally found the blood spring and filled the chalice, as 2 vampires from Harkon's court tried to jump us and claim the chalice for themselves, elevating their position in the ranks. I cut them down without a second thought before they could even finish speaking. I returned to Danica in Whiterun with the Eldergleam sap and trained my restoration with her before crafting a set of gear to reduce the spell cost of alteration magic, before grinding levels with the telekinesis spell, and training with Danica at every level until my restoration level was at 90. I returned to Golden Hills Plantation to brew some potions to sell to fund my training as I grinded my levels. I was unfortunately only able to afford training up until level 70, but it didn't matter. I grabbed the Necromage perk, giving me a massive power boost by amplifying the potency of the enchantments on my gear. I left Whiterun and set out to slay some dragons before I make some new gear. We're heading into Shimmermist Cave behind Tundra Homestead to search for a Falmer helmet. Falmer light helmets have the unique trait that allows you to wear them at the same time as a circlet, allowing you to effectively wear 2 enchanted headpieces at the same time. I cut my way through the Falmer and pillaged their helmets before destroying a Dwarven Centurion at the end of the dungeon. I slew another dragon at Skyborn Altar and learned a word for the Frost Breath shout before climbing up to Elder's Blood Peak to slay yet another, learning a word for the Disarm shout, before returning to Whiterun to make a new set of crafting gear, and then making a set of dragon scale armor and some dragon bone weapons. I decided to test my mettle against a giant after my massive power boost, and needless to say, I was quite pleased with the dark power at my fingertips. I took a pit stop in Morthal to do business with the alchemist, investing in her shop, purchasing all of her ingredients, and selling some of my own concoctions. I returned to Volkihar and delivered the chalice, and picked up Garmer, one of the Death Hounds, to travel with Janessa and I before returning to Harkon for our next mission. Harkon told us of an ancient prophecy that would give vampires power over the sun, that they could roam freely without fearing its burning tyranny over our kind, believing the key to unraveling the prophecy was written in Serana's Elder Scroll. Harkon assigned us the task of finding a moth priest to read the scroll. Serana suggested we go to the College of Winterhold to try and find a lead on a moth priest. I traveled back to the College of Winterhold and pestered Emo Shrek about the whereabouts of a moth priest. He was less than pleased to have to pause his music playlist of Pierce the Veil and Fallout Boy to speak with us, but he helped us out and pointed us towards Dragonbridge, a settlement near Solitude. Before we left, as a token of my apology, I sold him my other Elder Scroll that we used to defeat Alduin. You would think Hot Topic was restored to its former glory the way his face lit up with excitement. I set out for Dragonbridge and stumbled across Mirwatch, a wizard tower near Morthal. Mirwatch is a player house included with anniversary content. I think I may have purchased the anniversary upgrade at some point in my few months break I took from this playthrough after we slew Alduin. I cleaned up my inventory and planted some crops before we set out once again. When we arrived in Dragonbridge, I made straight for the inn where a soldier tipped us off about a destroyed wagon south of Dragonbridge. The wagon was attacked by vampires and the moth priest was in a nearby cave. 4 bears hauled out. I met some resistance from the Dawn Guard inside the cave. They were strong, but I am beyond strength. We subdued the moth priest and seduced him before feeding on him, turning him into my thrall. I sent the moth priest to Volkihar, feeling a little upset that I had to feed. The longer you go without drinking blood as a vampire, the stronger your powers become. Harkon congratulated us on our success as we returned to Volkihar, and we commanded the Moth Priest to read the Elder Scroll. The scroll spoke of a special weapon, the Bow of Ariel, the chieftain of the gods in the Elven Pantheon himself. The secret of the bow's power is recorded in 2 other Elder Scrolls. One scroll was stolen by Harkon's wife, the other was the one I sold to Emo Shrek back in Winterhold. Serana pulled me aside and told me about her mother going into hiding somewhere Harkon would never look. We made an educated guess and decided to look right here in the castle. I would have to first part ways with my most trusted companion. I bade farewell to Janessa, took a quick little nap before continuing my adventure. I awakened feeling a surge of vampiric power, bolstering my resistance to magic damage by 10%. Sleeping in a coffin felt strangely comfortable, almost natural. Serana and I skirted our way around the side of the castle as I began hacking and slashing a path through some impressively durable skeletons. We entered the side of the castle and slew a pack of angry deathhounds along with their feral vampire master. We made our way out to the courtyard and found the missing crests to the moon dial, revealing a hidden passage further into the castle. We carved our way through more skeletons and shattered the gargoyles who stood in our path. I pulled a candlestick to reveal a hidden pathway into the alchemy lab of Valerica, Serana's mother, and after thumbing through her journal, we learned she had successfully built a portal to the Soul Cairn, a plane of oblivion ruled over by the Ideal Masters, a group of powerful necromancers from a bygone era who ascended from their mortal flesh. When black soul gems are used, the souls of the mortals within are sent to the Soul Cairn, where they are tormented for eternity as the Ideal Masters slowly drain away their very existence. Serana and I reopened the portal to the Soul Cairn and ventured inside. I descended down the stone stairway to the lifeless gray soil below. I felt a strange tingling sensation as I gazed up at the hateful violet sky. Something was attempting to pull at my very soul, but the dark power within had shielded my spirit and coldened my heart. I would not be broken so easily. I was approached by a frantic lost soul who had lost his horse, Arvak, and offered my help. I beat and crushed my way through the bone men, charred, blackened skeletons who roamed the wastes of the Soul Cairn, on our way to a big, central castle-looking structure where we found Valerica, who warned us against bringing the Elder Scrolls to Harkon. Valerica revealed to us that the key to the prophecy was Serana herself. The blood of a daughter of Cold Harbor, a pure-blooded vampire, would blind the eye of the dragon. By firing arrows tainted with Serana's blood at the sun using Auriel's bow, Harkon would bring about an age of darkness, sacrificing his daughter for the betterment of vampire kind. Valerica told us the force field trapping her in the fortress could be taken down by slaying 3 undead keepers scattered across the Soul Cairn, and warned us of Durnavir, an undead dragon who served as a sort of warden for Valerica's prison. Serana and I set out to slay the keepers. I found a Reaper gem fragment on the way to the first keeper, who wielded a dragonbone bow with a matching set of armor. Despite the keeper's hulking stature, I broke his armor and shattered his bones within seconds, and took his bow for myself. We came across a group of lost souls who were transformed into bone men as we approached. I smashed their heads in and retrieved Arvak's skull from a pedestal and returned it to the first soul we came across, who gave us the ability to summon Arvak anywhere. I rode Arvak to the next keeper and cut him down like a katana through a fetus as I took his mace for myself. I found a lightning attractor and placed a greater soul gem in it and watched as it was struck by lightning and transformed into a black soul gem, summoning some more bone men for me to grind into dust. We found the final keeper and I crushed him like an insect beneath my boot and took his battle axe for myself. We returned to Valerica and followed her into the castle courtyard to retrieve the Elder Scroll when we were attacked by Durnavir, who I crushed into nothing within seconds. Very surprised, Valerica informed us Durnavir could not be slain by normal means, and there was a good chance we had merely displaced his soul from his body. Due to his contract with the Ideal Masters, we were unable to devour him. Valerica gave us the Elder Scroll and we bade her farewell. She could not return to Tamriel while Harkon lives, as that would only increase the chance he could see his prophecy to fruition, for she was also a daughter of Cold Harbor. We found Durnavir waiting for us just outside the castle. He commended our strength and gave us his name that we may call him in Tamriel to fight at our side. In his days when he roamed Tamriel, Durnavir sought power through necromancy and struck up a deal with the Ideal Masters. They would grant him great power in exchange for serving as a keeper over Valerica's prison until she died. They neglected to tell him, however, that she was a vampire and would not die of old age. Durnavir had spent so long in the Soul Cairn that it had become a part of him. He could not return to Tamriel for long, lest he wither away. He asked us to grant him the precious moments of his freedom in his home by calling upon him to fight by our side for a short time. In return, he would teach us his shout. I set out to search for some treasure before returning to Tamriel, and found the last 2 Reaper gem fragments. If you find the Reaper's lair in the Soul Cairn and bring all 3 Reaper gem fragments, you can do battle with a secret boss called the Reaper. The Reaper didn't stand much of a chance as my blades ripped his soul apart. The Reaper drops 3 black soul gems and a Daedra heart. I would definitely say it's worth it to fight him and collect even more treasure along the way as you hunt down the gem fragments. We returned to Tamriel and picked up Kusith, the other Death Hound in Volkihar, before setting out for the College of Winterhold. I took a pit stop in Solitude to train my destruction as I made my way back to Winterhold, where I purchased back my Elder Scroll from my favorite Elder Emo. He tried to shake me down for 4,000 gold, but with my silver tongue and a fistful of candy bracelets, I persuaded him to agree on 3,000. I summoned Arvak and returned to Volkihar, only to find my Moth Priest has gone blind from reading the first Elder Scroll. Dexion informed us of a special ritual we could undergo to read the Elder Scrolls ourselves. By heading to an Ancestor Glade and harvesting Canticle tree bark with a draw knife and surrounding ourselves with Ancestor moths, we could read the Elder Scrolls ourselves. We set out for the Ancestor Glade and stopped by Rorikstead on the way to purchase a goat named Hilda to accompany us on our travels and help us carry things. We arrived at the Ancestor Glade, harvested some tree bark, surrounded ourselves with a few moth swarms, and read the scrolls. Auriel's bow was located in a place called Darkfall Cave. The Dawn Guard showed up to try and stop us as we left the cave. They fought valiantly, but I shouted them down and broke their bodies. I called upon Arvak and we made our way to Darkfall Cave. We slew some trolls as we delved into the depths of Darkfall Cave, where we met Knight Paladin Gelibor, a snow elf who was not twisted and devolved as the Falmer were today. Gelibor welcomed us to the Chantry of Auriel, and to claim Auriel's bow, we must first slay his brother, Archcurate Verther. The Falmer swept through the Chantry without warning, slaying everyone. Gelibor believes they did something to Verther, as he just stands there, staring off into the sky endlessly, as if waiting for something. Gelibor handed us a ewer to fill at 5 way shrines scattered across the Chantry to gain access to Auriel's chapel. We bade Gelibor farewell and soldiered on with our new objective: survive Darkfall Passage. I flattened the Falmer in Darkfall Passage and discovered the first way shrine, where we took a portal out of the cave and to the next part of the Chantry, the Forgotten Vale, where we found the second way shrine and then the third. We ventured out onto a frozen lake where 2 twin dragons emerged from the ice, Voslarum and Naslarum. The twins managed to wound me with their fire breath. A quick fire resistance potion and a healing potion easily gave me the juice I needed to thrash them, though. I learned another word for the Drain Vitality shout on my way to the 4th way shrine. I began cleaving a path through a village of Falmer and slew a frost giant, retrieving the Emerald Paragon. I beat and broke more Falmer on the way to a glacial crevice in the ravine, where I carved through even more Falmer. I finally reached the end of the cave and began slaughtering the denizens of another Falmer village, where we found the 5th way shrine and the chapel of Auriel. We dumped out the water we collected from the way shrines in the basin to unlock the door to the inner sanctum. We ventured inside the inner sanctum and used the initiate's ewer to open hidden doors to search for treasure. I even slew another frost giant and retrieved the ruby paragon. We made our way through the sanctum and to the chapel, where we found Archcurate Verther. The frozen Falmer sprung to life and began attacking us from all sides. Kusith got in my way and got himself killed. He served me well, but this was not the time for mourning. I shattered the ranks of the Falmer, and Verther began pulling down the ceiling on us as more of his ranks began defrosting and setting upon us. Verther pulled down the building on us and fled to the balcony. I staggered to my feet, and Serana and I rushed out to confront him. Verther revealed to us that he was a vampire, and that the Falmer had never corrupted him, but one of his own initiates had infected him. Auriel was supposed to protect Verther, but turned his back on him after his infection, and Verther sought to take revenge. Though Auriel himself was beyond Verther's reach, his influence over this world was not. All he needed was Auriel's bow and the blood of a daughter of Cold Harbor. Verther created the ancient prophecy and has been waiting for someone like Serana to come along for a very long time. Serana grabbed Verther by his throat and lifted him off the ground. Verther unleashed an explosion of sunfire to knock her back. I lunged forward and hacked Verther to pieces with blade and axe before pillaging his corpse. One final way shrine arose from the stone, and Paladin Gelibor emerged. He congratulated us, and gave us Oriel's bow. We returned to Darkfall Cave and took a nap before speaking to Serana about our next move. Serana and I decided Harkon was too far gone and needed to die. We returned to the Forgotten Vale and began hunting frost giants for more paragons. I got stuck in a little mountain crevice and disabled survival mode temporarily to fast travel out, and when I re-enabled survival mode, the game bugged out and slashed my carry weight capacity. I drank a strength potion and made my way over to the Paragon receptacle, where I slew another frost giant to collect the Sapphire Paragon. I began slotting the Paragons in the Paragon socket to activate portals to hidden treasure troves before we left the Forgotten Vale. I didn't collect all the Paragons, but I wasn't too worried about it. We slew a heavily armored Falmer and got Oriel's shield, which has the special effect of storing energy from attacks to then be unleashed into a devastating shield bash to send enemies flying. We finished collecting treasure from the hidden troves before setting out for Mirwatch to clean up my inventory. I took another nap while at Mirwatch before returning to Castle Volkihar and confronting Harkon. Harkon yapped a bit, asked for the bow with a pretty please with a cherry on top, but unfortunately for Harkon, I didn't want any cherries today, I wanted chocolate syrup. I rushed forward and unleashed a devastating power attack, almost killing Harkon, but he surrounded himself with a shield of blood and darkness and began to heal as he summoned gargoyles and reanimated skeletons. I used Oriel's bow to dispel Harkon's shield and attacked him again, wounding him gravely but not quite killing him. Harkon drew up his shield again, but I quickly shot it down and shattered some gargoyles he summoned. Harkon drew his shield up a third time, but I dispelled it with ease and dealt one final power attack to finish him off. Harkon disintegrated into a pile of bloody embers. Gar and Merethi congratulated us on our victory over Harkon, telling us the castle belonged to us now. I spoke to Serana about treating some arrows with her blood. She seemed a little bit reluctant, but she obliged. I then traveled to Solitude and fulfilled the prophecy myself. Now, I can travel freely in the daytime without being hindered by the sun's tyranny. I've become strong on my journey thus far, but I'm not satisfied yet. Perhaps this feeling is merely a byproduct of the dark power that courses through my veins, but there's a strange yearning in my heart, almost like a hunger for more. I sold my potions for some extra gold before grinding some levels with telekinesis and training my destruction with the court wizard at every level up until I reached destruction 60 to get the augmented flames, frost, and shock perks. I enchanted a set of reduced spell cost conjuration gear and began spamming Soul Trap on a corpse to grind my conjuration up to 100. Unfortunately, the next few hours of my recording got corrupted. But essentially, what I had done after grinding my conjuration to 100 was I headed back to the College of Winterhold to get the master level conjuration spells, picked up Janessa again, made a Dragonbone dagger enchanted with flames and Soul Trap, and headed to Solstheim to begin the Dragonborn DLC. I only noticed this video corruption as I went to go and begin editing this playthrough, so I decided to reload one of the saves I had from when I was grinding my Alteration and Destruction in Solitude and re-record the first few quests of the Dragonborn DLC, up until the point where the next uncorrupted recording began. I wanted to address this as there may be some inconsistencies with my level, and I didn't want anyone to think I was cheating or faking my zero death run. I shot out the sun again and made my way over to Windhelm, where we took a nap in the inn before hiring a ship to Solstheim, an island covered with thick volcanic ash from the eruption of the Red Mountain which devastated the province of Morrowind. If you remember earlier in my playthrough, there was a group of cultists who had attacked me when we first arrived in Morthal. These cultists were sent from a man named Miraak in Solstheim, and I figured now would be a good time to go and investigate. We arrived in a small settlement of dark elves called Raven Rock and took a nap in the inn. I awoke to find myself working on a strange altar against my will, hearing whispers of Miraak's voice in my mind. I shook myself awake and set out for answers, stumbling across a small treasure chest with an ancient Nord pickaxe in it. As soon as I opened the chest, I was set upon by human-like creatures made of hardened ash and soot, the Ash Spawn, which I cleaved into nothing. I came across Rallus Sidaris, a dark elf seeking to excavate Kolbjorn Barrow, an ancient Nordic barrow buried within the ash. I tossed Rallus a couple of coins so he could hire some miners for his little project before returning to the Retching Netch Inn in Raven Rock and questioned Adril Arano about Miraak. giving me the new objective of investigating the Earthstone, where I met Neloth, a Dunmer wizard who was surprised to find us in control of our faculties and not mindlessly toiling away on the structure. I told Neloth we were looking for Miraak. Neloth told us Miraak had been dead for thousands of years, but tipped us off to the ancient ruins of Miraak's shrine toward the center of the island. I traveled to the Temple of Miraak and met Freya of the Skull. Freya told us that her father, the shaman of the Skull tribe, says that Miraak had returned to Solstheim. I told Freya Miraak tried to have me killed, and we agreed to venture into the temple together to find out what lies below. We carved through cultist and Draugr alike within Miraak's temple, delving deeper and deeper into the bones of the earth. We learned a word of power for the dragon aspect shout. I used my new shout and my arms were enveloped in a brilliant light as they were reinforced with draconic energy, boosting my power attack damage by 25%. I was set upon by Draugr, but I slew them with ease and ventured even further down, beginning to question just how deep this temple was. We cleaved through more and more Draugr and found a thick black tome resting on a pedestal in the main chamber. I opened the book and the words melded into slimy black tendrils that pulled me inside, where I finally met with Miraak in Apocrypha, the plane of oblivion ruled over by Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric prince of forbidden knowledge. Miraak brought me to my knees and sensed I was dragonborn. Miraak congratulated me on defeating Alduin before using his full-powered dragon aspect shout, telling us this mysterious realm was beyond our reckoning, and it was only a matter of time before Solstheim also belonged to him, as he already controlled the minds of its people. Miraak's eldritch servants set upon me, and everything faded to black. I awoke to a very concerned Freya, and after explaining everything that just happened, she suggested we return to her village and show the book to her father. He's a shaman, and he may know what to do next. We traveled with Freya to her village and spoke with her father, Storn Cragstrider. Storn told us Miraak was dragonborn, just like me, and that we must go to Saring's Watch to learn an ancient word of power that Miraak learned, and use this knowledge on the Windstone. We slew the dragon at Saring's Watch and learned the first word of the Bend Will shout. I used the shout on the Windstone and an eldritch lurker sentinel arose from the water. The lurker managed to hurt me a little, but I swiftly carved him into little tiny pieces to be scattered in the wind. I returned to Storn, who suggested I speak with Neloth, the Dark Elf wizard, to learn more about the Black Books. I stopped by Thirsk Meadhall to help a little tribe of Reiklings before making my way to the Beast Stone and cleansing it with my Bend Will shout and killing another lurker. I cleansed the Sunstone and made my way to Tel Mithrin and spoke to Neloth about where to find more black books to acquire the knowledge I need to defeat Miraak. Neloth suggested the two of us travel to Nechardak to acquire the black book that the dwarves found and stored in a protective case. When we left the tower, I felt my blood run cold as we were attacked by a legendary dragon. I was almost certain this was where my run would end, but to my surprise, I was able to hack the thing to bits before it even had an opportunity to attack me. I cleaved my way through the local ash spawn and used my Dead Thrall spell on a cultist, permanently reanimating it as a zombie to fight for me, before returning to Raven Rock and speaking with Glover Mallory, the blacksmith, who told us of a miner who stole his ancient Nord pickaxe, and I agreed to help him get it back. I rented a room in the Retching Netch Inn and slept for a good 11 hours before setting out again. In the morning, I helped a guard kill some ash spawn. I offered to wipe out the ash spawn for a price, and after searching the remains of the ash spawn we slew, we found a declaration of war from General Falx Carius, the Imperial garrison commander of Fort Frostmoth who died over 200 years ago after the eruption from the Red Mountain leveled the place. I ran over to Fort Frostmoth and began ripping and tearing the ash spawn to pieces. I entered the fort and carved my way through more ash spawn on my way to General Falx, who I slaughtered within seconds, taking his warhammer for myself. I returned to Raven Rock to report my success to the captain of the guard, and he gave us 10,000 gold as a reward. I used my Bend Will shout on the Earthstone and slew some lurkers before entering Raven Rock Mine to retrieve Glover's pickaxe. We spoke with Crescius Corellius and agreed to help him find his grandfather's journal at the bottom of the mine, and retrieve the pickaxe for Glover. The mine fed out into a Nordic barrow and we began carving a path through the Draugr. We found the journal at the bottom of the mine along with the Blood Scowl Blade, a great sword that fires red air/projectiles. We used the sword to solve a puzzle to open the door and used our Become Ethereal shout to run through the axe traps unscathed. We slew a dragon priest in the main chamber and learned another word for the dragon aspect shout before finding another black book, the Winds of Change. I began carving a path through the Eldritch Seekers as we ventured through Apocrypha to learn the secrets of this black book. I slew a lurker at the end of the dungeon and got the Companion's Insight perk, making it so my companions take no damage from my attacks, preventing any mishaps. I slew some Reavers on my way out of Bloodscale Barrow and made my way up to the Waterstone, cleansed it, and destroyed the lurker. We returned to Raven Rock and I returned to Glover about his pickaxe. Glover actually let me keep the pickaxe since I went through all the trouble of getting it, which was nice of him. I returned the journal to Cretius and received 750 gold for my troubles. Outside, the captain of the guard approached me and told me Adriel Arana wanted to speak with me. Adriel told me about an assassination plot on Councillor Morvain and suspected there was a spy here in Raven Rock. He sent me to the Retching Netch to go and begin looking for clues on where to start. The innkeeper told us of someone leaving EnvyAM offerings in the ancestral tomb of a rival dark elf clan in town, and perhaps we should stake the place out and see who it is. We waited in the shadows of the tomb and discovered Tilisu Severin to be the dark elf leaving the offerings. I returned to Adriel with my findings and he gave me the key to Severin Manor and instructed me to search the house for any evidence. I slew the residents and found a note in the safe confirming our suspicions and promptly returned to Adriel, who sent me to dispose of the assassins holed up in Ashfallow Citadel. We entered the fortress and I began cutting through the ranks of the Morag Tong assassins before slaying their leader. I returned to Raven Rock and reported my success to Adriel and exchanged a few words with Councillor Morvain, who rewarded me with 10,000 gold and ownership of Severin Manor. I met up with Neloth at Nachardak and carved my way through the Reavers outside. Neloth used a dwarven control cube to open the door, and inside we found the black book sealed behind a glass case in the floor. To access it, we had to restore steam power to Nachardak. We took the lift down into the lower part of the city, and Neloth used the second control cube to lower the water levels. We need to find 4 more control cubes in the dungeon to restore steam power and open the case to the black book. I found the first cube and used it to lower the water levels before destroying swarms of dwarven automatons on my way to the second cube, then the third, and then the fourth. I bent and broke more of the dwarven automatons on my way to grab the 5th and final cube we needed. I was a little surprised at how easy this was. As a little kid, I remember spending a lot of time in this dungeon, but as an adult, I blazed through it with ease, securing the black book for myself, Epistolary Acumen. I ventured through Apocrypha with measure and patience, taking caution not to fall into the ink as I continued through the chapters, slaying anything foolish enough to stand in my path. I eventually made my way to the end of the book and met with Hermaeus Mora himself. Mora told me the second word of the Bend-Will shout, but told us that without all 3 words we could never hope to defeat Miraak. Mora offered to teach us the 3rd word of Bend-Will in return for the secrets of the Skull for him to add to his library. I chose the Dragonborn Force power from the end of the book, powering my unrelenting Force shout before returning to Tamriel. I told Neloth what happened, who encouraged us to give Mora what he wanted. One of Miraak's allies, a dragon named Krasulha, tried to attack me when we left Nachardak, but just like a 50 caliber round through an orphan, we absolutely shredded him. We returned to Thirskmead Hall and I decided to help the Reichling some more by slaying some Nords who were attempting to take over their home. The Reichling chief commended our strength and demanded we battle him, as is their tradition. The strong battle the strong, and whoever is left is crowned chieftain. I reluctantly killed the Reichling chief when he began attacking me, wishing there was a more peaceful alternative. I made my way back to the Skull village and convinced Storn to give up the secrets of his tribe to their ancient enemy. I gave Storn the black book and watched in sorrow as Hermaeus Mora slaughtered him before my eyes and burned the final word of power for Bend-Will into Storn's body for me to learn. My darkened heart burned with the cold fires of sorrow, vengeance, and hunger. I read the black book, Waking Dreams. My recordings of the first quest of Solstheim apparently also included me going through Waking Dreams as soon as we had picked it up in Miraak's temple, so I re-recorded the footage of me progressing through the book. I began blazing through Apocrypha, carving a path through the denizens of Mora's realm and forging on to the end of the library where we learned the 3rd and final word for our dragon aspect shout. We were set upon by one of Miraak's minions, a dragon named Sarotar, who I bent to my will with my Thum. Saratar began flying us to Mirak's tower, but stopped to try and kill some seekers and lurkers. The problem was, since we were on the hardest difficulty, the enemies were regenerating faster than Saratar could damage them, without allowing me to do anything about it. So after waiting for literally 10 minutes, I decided to temporarily bump the difficulty down to Novice while Saratar slaked his bloodthirst and swapped it back to Legendary immediately after. I later learned that if I had pressed the A button to force Saratar to land, he would have skipped the fight entirely, and was left feeling a little stupid. But you live and you learn. We finally met with Mirak atop the tower at his full power, against me, who was hungry and sleep-deprived. And so it was that the first Dragonborn and the last Dragonborn would cross blades at the summit of Apocrypha. Mirak, fueled by determination to break free of his Daedric master's control and conquer Tamriel, and Envy, driven by an insatiable hunger for power, yet still holding the good interests of the common people close to his darkened heart. I used my fully powered dragon aspect shout as Mirak used his, and we fought not as Jore, but as Dova. I damaged Mirak too quickly and broke the fight. Mirak just stood there, unable to damage or be damaged, soft-locking my game. With this in mind, I reloaded my save and tried to fight him again. I don't typically reload saves, but this is clearly an unintentional game-breaking glitch preventing me from progressing. Mirak unleashed a spray of lightning which did little damage as I hacked away at him with blade and axe, dealing heavy damage to him. Mirak swiftly used his Become Ethereal shout and his whirlwind sprint out of the arena and into the pools of ink as his strength began to wane. Mirak emerged in the center of the arena, devouring one of his dragons to replenish his health. I began breaking and slashing away at Mirak again, and he drew a wicked green blade that transformed into a tentacle whip as it swung, siphoning my stamina as it lashed and punished me. I stepped back for a moment to drink a healing potion, and Mirak, wounded deeply by my blows, devoured another one of his allies to revitalize himself again before we clashed blades once more. I took a decent blow to the face as I hacked and slashed at Mirak again, wounding him gravely and forcing him to retreat to heal once more by devouring Saratar. I unleashed a frenzy of devastating heavy attacks, mortally wounding Mirak as he clung to threads of life and attempted to heal once again. But as he arose from the central pool of ink in the arena, Hermaeus Mora himself intervened and punished him for his disobedience and his fantasies of rebellion. Mora congratulated us on our victory as we devoured Mirak's soul and pillaged his remains. I returned to Solstheim and told Freya of our success, and that her father's death was not in vain, for Solstheim was free of Mirak's control, and all of the people of Tamriel were free from the threat of his dominion. Freya thanked me and warned me against serving Hermaeus Mora any further, and that I should walk with the light of Akatosh, for he blessed me with the soul of a dragon for a higher purpose. I returned to Raven Rock and stored away all my spoils before taking a well-deserved nap. And now, dear viewer, to answer my own question for you once again, can you beat Skyrim with only one life? Yes, you can. I, however, am still not satisfied. This dark hunger within has only grown. It ripped and clawed at my insides as my cold heart yearned for more. I came back to my playthrough after taking a break for 2 months, my heart heavy with sorrow. My original plan was to go everywhere and do everything in the game, all without dying. But with how my living situation was back when I was recording this playthrough all the way back in 2022 to early 2023, I had to cut corners and I kinda just bum-rushed the main story and the DLCs. I grinded up to level 80 and returned to Rallis Sidaris, who told me all the digging had woken up the Draugr in Kolbjorn Barrow and he had reached a dead end. I delved into the crypt, slew the Draugr, and removed the skull from a pressure plate, which opened a hidden door, where I retrieved Azadal's boots of water walking. I returned to Rallis and tossed him another 2,000 gold to hire some more miners before setting out for the Skull Village as their blacksmith had gone missing. I spoke with Daor Woodcutter about the blacksmith, who had been kidnapped by the Thalmor. I freed Baldur Ironshaper, who had been kidnapped for knowledge of forging Stalrim. Baldur told me of an elf named Enkarion who had a map to a hidden source of Stalrim. I took a nap before going to North Shore Landing, where I cut the Thalmor into little tiny steaks to be fed to the Horkers and retrieved the Stalrim map, before returning the map to Baldur in the Skull Village, who rewarded us with the secrets of forging Stalrim weapons and armor. I purchased some Stalrim gear from Baldur and returned to Raven Rock, where I stored my treasure away at home before taking a little break to go and edit some stuff and grab some food. When I returned, I set out for White Ridge Barrow, a Nordic barrow further north on the island, in search of a very special dragon priest mask that I would like. I entered the ruin and began squashing spiders beneath my boot as we delved deeper into the dungeon, where I came across bandits being controlled by parasitic spiders. I entered White Ridge Sanctum and slew a bandit who was throwing exploding flame spiders at me like grenades, before entering the main chamber and destroying Dukan, taking his dragon priest mask for myself. The mask increases frost resistance by 50% and frost spell damage by 25%. The frost spell damage increase affects the potency of frost enchantments on weapons. I learned a word of power for the Cyclone Shout before reading the Black Book, Sallow Regent. I hacked and slashed my way through all who stood in my way, and grabbed the Seeker of Shadows perk, making stealth skills 10% more effective. I left White Ridge Barrow and returned to Raven Rock, storing away the spoils of my little expedition in my house. I slept for a few days to get my next letter from Rallis, and then returning to Kolbjorn Barrow and cleaning out more Draugr and reporting my success to him, tossing him some more money before returning home, sleeping again until I got the next letter, and repeating the process again, this time receiving Ozadal's Ring of Arcana before tossing Rallis 5,000 gold. I slept until the courier came again, and made one final trip to Kolbjorn Barrow, where I learned that Rallis was possessed by Ozadal, the ancient dragon priest who slept here in Kolbjorn Barrow. I learned another word for the Cyclone Shout and carved my way through Draugr on my way up to the main chamber, picking up Ozadal's Armor of Retribution and Ozadal's Helm of Vision along the way. I finally made it to the main chamber and watched Rallis awaken Ozadal himself. I slew Ozadal without even breaking a sweat, taking his mask and confronting Rallis, who had zero recollection of any of the events that had taken place. I spared Rallis's life and found another Black Book, Filament and Filigree. I sprinted through Apocrypha, blazing a trail of chaos in my wake, and selected the Secret of Protection perk, allowing me to reduce damage taken by 50% for 30 seconds. I returned to Raven Rock and slew one of the locals to procure their shoes, before taking a ship back to Skyrim and making my way to Golden Hills Plantation, gathering some items to enchant a new set of crafting gear. I brewed some enchanting potions and returned to Solstheim, trading out the Seeker of Shadows perk for Seeker of Sorcery, drinking an enchanting potion, and enchanting a new set of crafting gear while wearing Ozadal's armor, which grants 10% stronger enchantments as the set bonus. I grabbed Seeker of Shadows again, and brewed some more enchanting potions with my new set of crafting gear, then grabbed Seeker of Sorcery once more to make one final definitive set of crafting gear. Dunmer shoes have the unique effect of being able to be enchanted with chest piece enchantments, allowing me to have another piece of Fortify Smithing. I grabbed Seeker of Shadows once more and made a Fortify Smithing potion before grabbing Seeker of Might and reinforcing a set of Stalrim gear. I grabbed Seeker of Shadows again to make more enchanting potions before grabbing Seeker of Sorcery and enchanting my Stalrim gear. I enchanted my weapons with frost damage and chaos damage. Stalrim gear has the unique hidden effect of boosting the power of frost enchantments by 25%, and since chaos does fire, ice, and lightning damage all at once, the fire and lightning damage of the enchantment are boosted by proxy from the frost enchantment. I equipped Dukan to boost the damage of my enchantments by another 25% before heading outside and testing my new toys on a legendary dragon before taking a bit of a break. I returned to my playthrough 9 months later. I still couldn't shake the feeling of unfinished business, and I was still hungry for more. I ventured off to Tel Mithrin, where we told Neloth of our victory over Miraak, and offered to help him out a little after his steward, Verona, went missing. I asked one of Neloth's servants if she had seen his steward, who told me she had set out for Raven Rock hours ago. I came across Verona's lifeless corpse in the ash and enacted revenge on the creatures responsible. I reported my findings to Neloth, who tasked me with finding a new steward for him. I returned to Raven Rock and recruited Drovis Relvi and returned to Neloth, who gave me permission to use his staff enchanter and access to his Black Book, the Hidden Twilight. I delved through the pages of the book, destroying the insolent insects foolish enough to stand in my way, making my way to the end of the book and accepting the Mora's Boon perk, a power which would fully restore my health, magicka, and stamina, presumably once per day upon use. I returned to Raven Rock and fed on Janessa, taking a little break before setting out once again. I have become far stronger than any who have come before me, and yet I still feel so cold, so empty, so hungry. I ventured north to a glacial cave on the far side of the island and retrieved the skull of Karstag, the ancient king of the frost giants, before delving into the cavernous ruins of Castle Karstag, crushing the little Reiklings beneath the head of my axe as we made our way to the courtyard. I recharged my weapons and set Karstag's skull on his frozen throne. A howling blizzard erupted and screamed over the arena as the soul of the ancient king arose from the snow, accepting my challenge. Dread rose within my heart as a crazed excitement shook my bones. I charged forward and used my Become Ethereal shout to avoid a crushing club slam attack before retaliating with a counterattack of my own, heavily injuring Karstag before he unleashed an earth-shattering stomp, sending me flying across the arena and wounding me gravely. I chugged some health and resistance potions before staggering to my feet, putting some distance between myself and Karstag as he called a swarm of ice wraiths to his defense. I used Become Ethereal to dodge a crushing club strike before unleashing a devastating combo of heavy attacks, shattering his soul into pieces. I pillaged Karstag's remains and took a seat on his throne, adrenaline still coursing through my veins, finally satiating the terrible hunger in my darkened heart. I returned to Skyrim, and my blood turned to ice as I was approached by a massive warrior, clad in ebony that shone like the radiance of midnight. This warrior has done all that can be done. There were no more quests for him to undertake, no more villains to be slain, and no more challenges to face, except for me. I was his final challenge, and only I could send him to Sovngarde with honor. I summoned Arvak and made my way to the last vigil to challenge this great warrior. I summoned a Frost Thrall and a Storm Thrall to assist me and approached the warrior. There were no words to be exchanged. He patiently awaited for me to make the first strike as he sharpened his blade. The hunger had returned once again, and this time it was stronger than it had ever been before. I was overtaken with a great terror alongside manic euphoria. I didn't calculate or plan. This hunger within had run wild and I must satiate it. I struck the ebony warrior with my axe. Even a simple light attack would heavily wound most foes, but not him. He laughed in my face and demanded that I hit him harder, as I hardly put a dent in his armor. I waited for my summons to trade his attention before charging in and unleashing a frenzy of devastating heavy attacks, wounding him heavily, before I was struck with crushing, earth-shattering energy. The light of the world around me was extinguished in an instant as everything went to black. My limp, lifeless body fell to the ground, beaten and broken by my own crushing power. I will end this video answering my original question. Can you beat Skyrim with only one life? Yes, you can. However, there is one more question burning in my heart after all is said and done. Am I happy? Am I satisfied? The answer to that is no. I'm still hungry, and I will definitely be doing this again. The Ebony Warrior has a heavy armor perk called Reflect Blows, which has a 10% chance to reflect damage dealt by melee weapons back to his attacker. I had never fought the Ebony Warrior before, and I had no idea he had this perk. I should have taken things slower, thought things out a little more, and prepared for the unexpected. I wasn't going to search up a guide on how to kill him or anything, or look at all of his weaknesses, because I really love the wonder and magic that comes with exploring and discovering new things myself. This run was 58 hours long, and I originally uploaded the entire thing in a Let's Play style format about a year ago, but I figured I would try my hand at taking all 48 of those videos and making a nice little digestible video heavily inspired by Mittensquad's Can You Beat Fallout New Vegas with Only One Life video, paying my respects to a legendary content creator. I've been playing through Skyrim again, doing another Zero Death run over on my Twitch over the last year, and that playthrough is much more in-depth and thorough, holding closer to my original goal of playing through all the side quests and exploring everything. I'm currently 280 hours in on that playthrough, and I will soon be uploading the VODs to my VODs channel before slowly working on another video similar to this one, compiling the entirety of that run. Thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed today's video. This took a really long time to make, and even if it only gets 10 or 20 views, I'm still really proud of it, and this was something that I did for me. Peace out, everyone.
Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't.